Hello guys, Uncle Vasil here with yet another history video. This time we are going to explore who Fritz Haber was and the Haber-Bosch process, which enabled mass-produced fertilizer and reshaped civilization. I hope you enjoy. Let's get started. In the early 1900s, the world was quietly sliding toward a crisis that most people didn't even realize was happening. The planet was running out of nitrogen, the key ingredient that makes soil fertile. For centuries, farmers had relied on natural sources like bird droppings from remote islands, manure, and crop rotation to keep fields productive, but by the turn of the century those supplies were nearly exhausted. Populations were booming, cities were growing, and demand for food was skyrocketing, yet harvests were stagnating because the soil simply couldn't replenish itself fast enough. Scientists warned that without a new way to feed crops, global famine was inevitable, not in some distant future, but within a generation. Humanity had hit a biological ceiling, and unless someone figured out how to create fertilizer out of thin air, millions would starve. Fritz Haber's breakthrough began as a routine chemistry experiment that shouldn't have worked, yet it ended up rewriting the rules of modern life. At the time, scientists knew the air was full of nitrogen, but they couldn't get plants to use it. The molecule was too stable to break apart. Haber was experimenting with different pressures, temperatures, and metal catalysts, mostly chasing academic curiosity rather than expecting a world-changing result. Then, almost unexpectedly, he found the right combination. Under extremely high pressure and intense heat, with an iron-based catalyst, nitrogen and hydrogen fused into ammonia. It was a tiny amount, produced in a lab apparatus barely bigger than a suitcase, but it proved something revolutionary: that fertilizer could be manufactured from the air itself. What began as a scientific puzzle suddenly became the key to feeding billions, turning Haber's accidental success into one of the most consequential discoveries in human history. The Haber-Bosch process truly began when Fritz Haber's tiny lab experiment was handed over to Carl Bosch, an engineer at Baden aniline and soda factory who faced the nearly impossible task of scaling it up. Haber had proven that nitrogen from the air could be turned into ammonia, but only in a fragile tabletop reactor that produced mere droplets. Bosch had to transform the delicate reaction into a massive industrial system capable of running non-stop under crushing pressures and blistering temperatures. To do it, he invented new steel alloys that wouldn't crack, redesigned reactors from the ground up, and built entire facilities around controlling this volatile chemistry. By 1913, the first full-scale ammonia plant was running, turning air and hydrogen into fertilizer by the ton. This marriage of Haber's scientific insight and Bosch's engineering genius became the Haber-Bosch process, a technological leap so powerful that it reshaped agriculture, industry, and the future of global food production. The invention that fed billions refers to the moment synthetic fertilizer became widely available, and its impact is almost impossible to overstate. Before the Haber-Bosch process, crop yields were capped by whatever nitrogen nature could provide, which meant food production could only grow so much. But once ammonia could be manufactured on an industrial scale, farmers suddenly had access to a steady, affordable supply of nitrogen fertilizer that supercharged plant growth. Wheat, rice, and corn harvests surged, global food supplies expanded, and countries that once struggled with chronic shortages could finally sustain their populations. Today, scientists estimate that roughly half of all the protein in the average human body can be traced back to nitrogen fixed through this process, meaning billions of people are alive because of it. What began as a chemical reaction in a lab became the backbone of modern agriculture, quietly supporting the entire structure of contemporary civilization. Fritz Haber's legacy carries a dark and deeply complicated shadow because the same brilliance that helped feed the world was also turned toward far more destructive purposes. During World War I, Haber became a leading figure in Germany's chemical weapons program, personally overseeing the first large-scale use of chlorine gas on the battlefield, a moment that changed warfare forever and caused immense suffering. He believed he was serving his country through science, but the consequences were horrific, and even many fellow scientists condemned his involvement. The tragedy extended into his personal life as well. His wife, Clara Immerwahr, also a chemist, was devastated by his work on poison gas and took her own life shortly after the first attack. After the war, Haber's Jewish heritage put him at odds with the rising Nazi regime, forcing him to flee the country he had once served. His story is a stark reminder that scientific breakthroughs can be used for both creation and destruction, and that the moral weight of innovation often depends on how humanity chooses to wield it. The invention that reshaped the planet refers to how the Haber-Bosch process didn't just boost crop yields, it fundamentally altered the trajectory of human civilization and even the Earth itself. Once synthetic fertilizer became widely available, global agriculture shifted from relying on natural cycles to depending on industrial chemistry, allowing populations to grow at a pace that would have been impossible otherwise. Entire nations transformed their economies as food production soared, urbanization accelerated, and life expectancy increased. But this massive leap came with planetary-scale consequences. Fertilizer runoff reshaped rivers and oceans, nitrogen emissions altered ecosystems, and the sheer abundance of food fueled unprecedented population growth. In a single generation, humanity went from living within the limits of nature to actively rewriting them, making the Haber-Bosch process not just a scientific breakthrough but one of the most powerful forces ever unleashed on the modern world. This is the end of the video, guys. I hope you found this educational. For more history content, please check out my channel. Also, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.